want to thank both of you. You guys are really awesome to work with, ambitious, and as you can kind of tell, it's a lot that goes into it. And I think just for people who do watch, it's not just a one-click thing and all of a sudden you're a business owner and you make millions of dollars. It's a lot of work. It's stressful. It's a lot of back and forth. We were talking late on some nights. That's part of the process. And so I appreciate you guys for being just awesome clients. But what I first wanted to ask was why. I know we met each other kind of over Instagram, but why was there interest in buying a business? What was the goal for the two of you?
I can start and then I think we probably have both similar but also different answers. I've been working in the corporate world for most of my life. I had a taste of entrepreneurship early on in my life to basically pay for myself through some of my college, and then early on in high school, I'd started a couple businesses. And so I knew what it was like to start a business, to run a business, and the hard work that it takes. But I think I wanted to, working in the corporate world and learning from a lot of the different roles that I had. And so, I basically started in this BD type of sales type of role, and did that for the last, I would say almost 20 years. And I think just going through the motions of going up in your career ladder and understanding that there's kind of a plateau. I could become X or go become a CEO or a channel officer or something. But ultimately, what is that going to do? It's still going to have the stress of reporting to someone and not having the freedom to create my own schedule and to create a different lifestyle that we want to live as we, try to grow a family, et cetera. So this was a natural next step for me, as I have been, through probably 6 or so startups, of which 5 of them exit, of which my one I'm in right now just got acquired. So it's very
Interesting timing.
very interesting timing. It's very serendipitous that we went through this whole thing. We can talk about that later, Jordan, but it's just kind of crazy how it went down. But this was the next chapter and the next step that we both had talked about even early on when we first met. And so I think it was just taking the first step is the hardest thing, right? A lot of people don't do that. And for us, that's what, I think that's what sets us apart, is we've always been kind of this team that goes in around, we've lived around the world. We've, just kind of, we've started other side hustles, and now we're just okay, that was kind of a taste of it. Let's go all in. It's time. If we both put in 40, 50 hours a week into something that we truly believe in, that we love, that's ours, then it's worth it. And we'd probably be way more successful and have way more freedom. So that's my answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, I was already in transition, similar to Jordan. I've had a really successful corporate career. But I had also started small businesses on the side. So I knew what it was like to do that startup hustle, so to speak. And I think between looking at our options of knowing we could start a company, but also experiencing the corporate world and having success there, we both kind of figured out okay, so we don't really want to be I don't want to call it struggling, but doing that startup struggle, we're kind of over that phase. And so it was what would be the next version of that? And so the more that I was doing research around, okay, what could be my next either career or career opportunity, it just kept getting me closer and closer to, I think actually I just want to buy something. Buy something that's already successful, buy something that's already working. And instead of being startup entrepreneurs, being scale up entrepreneurs and growth entrepreneurs.
Yep.
So we were considering, more passive opportunities as well, which we were open to and still are. But for this particular deal that we did, it was all of the right equations came into place. We really got along with the sellers. We really enjoyed the business. The numbers made sense. The price point made sense. Everything just lined up perfectly. It happened to be in a location we like. So all of it had to be the right fit. And I think we just got lucky because we doubled down on our efforts so much, especially with you, Jordan, that it was okay, we could move quickly and be nimble, and we were open to anything.
Yeah, but I mean, that's very good. And Jordan, to your point too about taking that first step, there's a stat that floats out there. I'm sure I've mentioned it to you guys too, but like 90% of buyers never actually buy a business. And I really do think it's because of that first step. Anyone can pull up Biz Buy Sell and scroll for days, but it's actually like, okay, we need to pull the trigger on this and start to pursue something, and back to my point about, you guys just being so awesome to work with this, because you do have to have that ambition to do something like this. And I think a lot of people, as you were saying, Nicole, like they might slip into like, I want to buy a business. It's going to pay me as this passive income. I don't have to do anything. It's just not the truth. And I would always advocate, like, why would you want to do that? Wouldn't you want to be in the business, understand it, know the employees, know the clients, and build it up, and then kind of start to remove yourself from there? And you guys took it a step further, and you're relocating to this location for the business you bought, and that's just what it takes. And I don't think a lot of people are willing to do that. And I'm not saying you have to move to do that, but if you find a good opportunity and you're willing to move and you're able to move, that's kind of sometimes what it takes,
Or
And
at least be willing to travel a lot, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly it too. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, we're excited to continue to grow this business and see what we can do with it. And then also keeping in mind those that thought of, okay, how do we scale up, but how do we work our way out of working?
Yeah.
Not to say that there's never going to be no work to do, because there's the work is just going to change.
Mhm.
But having that mindset from the beginning and knowing that it's going to be a year or two, probably two at the least, it's like, okay, we've got a long-term plan. We know what the final outcome is going to be, and it gives us something to look forward to.
Yeah. Start working on the business as opposed to maybe in the business, in the beginning.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
What was the process like from your guys' perspective? I know you guys kind of took a little bit of a different, more unique route. We kind of talk about the business later on if you want to, but from your perspective of buying a business, the processes and the steps, what was like that from your point of view?
You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think first and foremost, it was like us doing our own research, and kind of understanding, like the difference, between starting your own business and buying a business, right? And so I think it became pretty clear that, the odds are kind of against you if you're starting your own business, right? So
Mhm.
it was like, okay, check, not doing that. Then so two is like, okay, now if we want to purchase a business, maybe let's go buy a book. So, Jordan, I forget the book that I told you we purchased, but it was like at the same time that we had
Was
almost
it
met
buy
you.
then build?
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
So we
Great.
were reading Buy Then Build, like taking turns reading it and discussing the chapters and stuff. And then we were just on Instagram, and to be honest, like, how their algorithm works. If you're like searching on Google and stuff, like it's going to start showing up on Instagram, and then your video started showing up as well as a couple other people. And also we started looking at, some of those purchasing websites. And I think just as a combination of that, I was like, okay, well, let's talk to someone. Let's just like, let's open the door, which is really what we did. Let's open the door. Let's have an initial conversation. And I think I was bugging you, Jordan. I was like, hey, like you said, you're going to have a class coming out. I was like, this is exactly what we need. Like, we need to learn how to buy a business before we like start the process. But I think, and so that was like step one. Then when you launched your then we had that conversation, and then it kind of like progressed really fast from there. Because we already like had made the decision that we're going to go down this road. I think we know together that like we're not the type of people that just want to go in half-assed on these things. We like to go on 100%, which is why we took your other option, which was like, no, we want more Jordan's time. So,
Yeah.
because we didn't want to go into it and say like, okay, we learn and then like, have to go through each step on our own. Like, we just wanted to have that support, which was huge. And so that was like a no-brainer for us. Like, it was like, okay, in fact, I'll just be honest, like, I don't think I watched but 2 of your videos, because one is we went really fast. Like, we were starting to look at business immediately, but then we were meeting almost on a daily or weekly basis. And you were teaching us as we were like basically going through your typical A to Z learning process. And so, not to say that someone shouldn't go and like absolutely watch your videos. We just took the approach of, hey, we want more one-on-one time with you. And so we took that option. And I think it obviously worked out well for us. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we both also have had really good experience throughout our careers with having we know the value of a great mentor. And so and so I feel like we went into this wanting to be coached and really trying to listen as opposed to uh direct the course of action, as opposed like we were like, okay, we're ready and we'll do whatever we need to do. But we also were waiting for your feedback and your direction and your coaching and your mentorship. And so we know that we appreciate the value of that. And so that's why we were like, your upgraded option was absolutely better for us. And exactly to Jordan's point, like we actually will do the course one day because we still want to. There's still, I'm sure, things that we don't know. And we're definitely going to buy another business one day. We're going to table that for now because we're so busy,
Yeah.
busier than we've ever been, but we can't wait to do that again, and we'll definitely be revisiting it. But it was so helpful for us, especially considering how fast we moved, to be able to have like just a direct conversation and
Mhm.
really play out scenarios and truly like understand, here's option A, B, C, D that we can do. In our particular case, when closing the deal, we had a lot of negotiation, and the negotiation was definitely not linear. Our negotiation went from like, we had seller financing options, then we didn't have seller financing options. We had buying the business over 7 years, then we had buying the business over a year and a half. All of our buying options were so crazy and all over the place. And to our surprise, we ended up in buying the company at 50% ownership with a future buyout of the remaining 50% ownership in a year. I mean,
At a very low cost.
yeah, like we
You guys
would have
got a
never
very
landed
good
on
deal.
that without your support.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with
got
like, obviously no profit sharing. So it's like basically our business paying a small salary. So it really worked out for us. But I also think there's one more thing to add there. There's something about going to a new path, a new chapter, and you know nothing about it. And to just like say, I don't know how to do this, lead me the way.
Yeah.
It's actually, it just kind of it takes all the weight off the shoulders of just like having to do it on your own and figuring it out, which we're doing that now, obviously, with this business.
But it only works, not to cut you off, it only works if the individuals, like I keep saying, are ambitious enough and willing to do the work, right?
Yeah.
You don't
Definitely.
have
Oh,
to
it's
know-
hard. It's definitely
Yeah,
hard.
Oh
you
yeah,
don't.
it wasn't like we weren't doing things, right? But what I mean is like going into it, not
Yeah.
like just saying, look, Jordan, we don't know what we're doing here. We need your help. Walk us through A to Z steps. Tell us what we're doing.
Yeah, that was priceless for us. Absolutely
You guys did it.
priceless. Because we still had our other days of being like we had a few moments where we're like, holy shit, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And
Like you kind of freak out. But also the really rewarding thing for us is there's been so many aspects to this experience, from looking into buying a business to actually now owning the business and working in it, that we've been like, wow, we actually just did that. Like we accomplished that. And it was like really scary in the moment. And then literally it's the hardest in that moment. And then it gets easier. Like
Mhm.
the next couple hours is all of a sudden easier, or the next day is easier. So there's been a lot of ups and downs, but the downs are so rewarding afterwards. Just because it's scary. You're out of your comfort zone. You're pushing yourself out of your shell and out of your box, but definitely worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of a softball question, but I was curious what, in your guys' mind, what was the hardest part of the process, whether it was just looking for businesses? I know we looked at a few, or if it was just reviewing the businesses, trying to find out what it was, or the negotiation. What was the hardest part or step of the actual transaction process? And then here comes the softball part is, do you think someone could go at it alone without knowing that process?
Yeah, I'll start. Hardest part, I mean, looking for a business is like looking for a house. It's like, it's exciting. It's like, oh, babe, look at this. Like, this looks like an awesome business. And I think like harder part is probably getting down to the nitty gritty of actually taking a look underneath the hood and really understanding what this business is doing and how it's performing. That was probably the harder part. Like once we decide, hey, we're gonna go meet the owners and like getting a true understanding, are they hiding anything? Is there the way they're explaining things, or they're putting this business up on a huge mantle to say like, oh, it's doing incredible, and like then coming back and double checking and asking them tough questions to get a true understanding of where the business is at and where it's going. Those are all like that, like whole part between, I would say, your initial conversation and really doing your due diligence is probably like the hardest part in my mind. And then financing is also a stressful thing. It's like, to be honest, that's like, maybe it's because I think about it a lot of just like, how are we going to afford this or what that, right? So, that was also very stressful. Just like, hey, we were looking, Jordan, we were looking at businesses that were way more expensive than this business. But we go through traditional, SBA type of approach, which is actually a lot less stressful. But then you have to go raise, funds, or depending on how you're going to go about getting that 10%. Well, this was like a hardline loan, which, we had to pay quite a bit of money, as you know, Jordan, to get that loan. Because they're putting together a package from different loan people, different organizations, that you not necessarily could go and find really quickly, right? And so you're paying like 15% of that loan. So that was stressful, I would say, and hard. And like, we had to go and like really figure that out. And really say, okay, is this what we want to do? Like, it's a costly loan, but Jordan, you helped us negotiate, obviously make it make sense, and to where we could pay it off very quickly. And that's exactly what we're doing. So I'd say but that's why like doing this on your own, here's the softball piece, is really hard, because like without the help of the negotiation, plus like understanding how you can fit your financing into the part of negotiation and making it make sense for you. Because, as soon as you start the business, that's actually the scariest part, is probably like first taking it over and being like, are we going to like make payroll?
Yeah.
The working capital, we could talk about that. Like really truly understanding what it's going to cost to start the business and run it for the first 1, 2, 3 months. That's really stressful. So like knowing how much you're going to get and all that stuff, but doing that on your own, like, and trying to figure that out while negotiating, I'm not sure like we could have gotten the deal that we would have had, or we would have walked away from this deal without kind of like the back and forth with you. So
Yeah.
Okay. Just to make sure I'm getting the question right. Can you repeat? I know the softball part of do you feel like we could do it on our own? What was the first
Yeah.
part of it?
I was
What was
just
that?
curious, like going through it, like what was the hardest part?
Okay.
'Cause I know a lot of
Yeah.
people have a hard time searching, or like Jordan said, sometimes it's getting into the nitty gritty. So I was just curious what, I guess, stressed you out the most,
Yeah. For me, it was a trust thing. So the hardest part was like, okay, we can look at the numbers and feel like we understand the numbers. But then there's the component of like everyone does their numbers just a little bit differently. It also varies dependent on the industry and the type of company that you're in, business that you're looking at. So like, yes, the numbers make sense, but it was having that like buffer with you for you to be like, this actually makes a little bit more sense than this option, or this actually makes a little bit more sense than that option, or you should ask more questions here because this is where there could be some gray area. Ask more questions here because this is where there can be some gray area. Because I think there was, between Jordan and I, like we looked at a few companies where right off the get-go, just at first glance, looking at numbers, we were like, this looks great. And it did. But then if you have, by having your support to know to ask the right questions, then it changed our trust of that individual. Not to say that they were like hiding something or whatever intentionally, or being malicious with their numbers or anything like that, but you equipped us with, here's how you should approach this topic, and this is how you can get more information in a way that's respectful. It gets a lot of detail back to you, and it can help you make a more well-rounded decision. We wouldn't have known that gap. And so for me, I was just constantly kind of stressed about like, can we trust this? How do we know that this is like good information or solid information? And so by you filling that void for us was really, really helpful to ease that stress, so that by the time we decided like, okay, we're doing this, we're getting this business. We felt confident in it. It's still scary, but felt
Yeah.
confident.
Good.
So that's the piece of like what was the most stressful. The softball element of could we do it alone? I think we could probably do it alone with a big asterisk of it would take dedicated, persistent, like ongoing learning and focus for a much, much longer period of time, well before we even looked at a company. Like we would have had to take like other courses or read more books or do more online searching. Like that would have taken, I don't know, easily like a year or longer, for probably longer to feel confident to like fully represent ourselves and like do our own thing for the first time. And even then, like it's just textbook stuff. Like real life is so different, and to like know and remember like what you read 3 months ago to apply it to a conversation that's moving quickly is very difficult. So
Yeah.
could we maybe, but it would take way more effort on our part. And so just to have someone to rely on, I'd pick that route any day.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Awesome. And then I just had a couple more questions, and then I kind of want to hear about how the business is going here. Obviously, we kind of touched on the negotiation part. That was a wild couple days going back and forth there. But you guys actually pulled off a really favorable structure for the two of you, in my opinion. It was a win-win for both, but I think we kind of stood our ground and held out for a little bit and we played the game a little bit, and I think
Yeah.
it worked. I really do. And so one, congrats on that. And then two, I'm just kind of curious, within that structure, you were
Sorry,
hurricane hit
kitchen stuff. I don't know. Go ahead. Ask that question again.
through the negotiation and the structure. What was, I guess, one of your favorite things you got in that deal structure? Because he ended up offering, I think, a significant amount of other benefits outside of, just financial things, whether it was splitting working capital or, other coaching or,
You want
you
me
know,
to go into the details of what?
you don't have to. You don't have to. I'm just kind of curious because you guys actually were able to structure something pretty significantly in your favor, I thought. And I was just curious if
Yeah.
there's anything that stood out where you're like, hell yeah, we got this too.
I mean, we were ready to walk multiple times.
Yep.
So, and I think that's what you like helped us say too, is that, um, be ready to walk. And that's kind of actually the feeling of being able to walk is really nice.
It's a relief. Yeah.
Relief,
Yeah.
because
To take the emotion out of it.
there is this like pressure that you get, and this pressure can come on early on, like even before you do your letter of intent. It's like, if you really like this business, you got to move fast, and you got to put that letter of intent in, and then
There's
like,
always another buyer.
yeah,
Oh,
always another
No.
buyer, and
Yep.
you don't necessarily know if what they're saying is true, and there's a lot of that. So, through the negotiation with these guys, we had, I guess, what was going for us is that they had a timeline. And so they needed to exit the business because he was basically, both of them, this husband and wife duo, husband and girlfriend duo, were like
moving across the
moving across the country. And so they really needed to like get this thing done.
Mm-hmm.
And so it started at X, where it's like, you know, where we came in at purchase what they wanted at, which I think it was like 330,000 or something like that. And then they said someone came in and put an offer above it. And so but we knew like we were preferred kind of buyers because we had already been speaking to them. They had already mentioned many times they loved that it was another husband and wife type of duo. And so there's more going on there, but ultimately we came in at 315, and that's truly where the negotiation started. And then as we started to look at, and we finally got access to the true financials of what was going on, then we were like, whoa, okay, here, like this is actually where your business is at and what you're making versus your profits and losses, your expenses. And it became clear that there's no way we're going to be offering the full price of the business, but it was still like a great growth opportunity. Like they had a great community. We bought a gym, by the way, a women's only kickboxing gym. And so they had a great community already established, great employees that, that it took a while to like establish those employees. They all started actually as clients, raised their hand as coaches, and then slowly moved their way up to like assistant manager for one of the employees. So it's like the most natural, organic way of like growing a business. But think about like the 9 or so months, almost a year that they grew where they weren't successful the first when they were distant, by the way. So they were like, they bought the business, 4 months, weren't there, and basically hired a manager, failed.
Yep.
And they're like, okay, to your point, Jordan, they had to be there. So they moved to Florida. And as soon as they were there and boots on the ground, they naturally grew the business very quickly and fast, and
A lot of success.
saw a ton of success. And so we took it over. We had this opportunity to like kind of continue to ride the train as it's growing, follow his process, because the person who we purchased it from has done this many times and runs a specific gym process called Gym Launch, and work for that company. So like one of the best people to purchase from and continue and learn from and continue to have as a mentor for that, which is also part of the negotiation that we had.
Yeah.
Because that's also the scariest part, is when you take over a business and it's like, bye, we
Exactly.
agreed on 1 month or whatever you agree upon, bye. Like you don't have any opportunity to talk to us anymore for help or whatever it is. That is like very scary. So like we moved down here, etc. And like 1 month we had to basically learn as much as we can with boots on the ground, with having them here, and then being able now to like reach out to him on a weekly basis and have him as a consultant is like huge.
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
final outcome with our negotiations were, instead of just outright buying a full company and having a standard traditional transition plan, we ended up with the 50% buyout immediately, with a 50% buyout a year later. We determined what that second 50% buyout would look like based on what number. So we based it on 0.5% of EBITDA.
Yeah.
So we already have that in agreement. And then it was also the seller would stay on for that full year as an advisor, and we'd have weekly calls until the end of this year. And then after this year, and as we get into 2025, for the remainder of that time, it would be like bi-weekly calls, something like that.
Whatever we need.
Whatever we
Yeah.
need. The thing that's been a bonus on top of that is we've developed a great friendship now, and so I think we'll end up talking more regularly. But at least from a contractual perspective, we had that basis to
It's in
work
there.
off of, a strong foundation. The other perks that were included were, as Jordan mentioned, the seller previously worked for one of the marketing agencies that we're using, the gym marketing agencies that we're using, and so we get the like employee price of that software, which is and services, which is great. So we got that locked in, saving us some money. And then lastly, he offered to purchase kind of like a scale up course for us that's hosted by that gym marketing company. And so we'll be attending that for more learning above and beyond what his mentorship and advisory services will provide. So having all that combined together ended up being a really, really strong offer for us to, and like you mentioned, Jordan, a win-win scenario.
Yeah. I think that was one of the biggest things that kind of just slid under the radar, was that year-long mentorship from him. Because of the company that he worked for, that marketing company, they have an incredible track record of success in that industry that you guys are in. And so when he said that, I was like, shit, this just got really good for you guys too. So I think that was a huge part that you guys were able to negotiate.
Well, and the great part was that we had actually never even heard of it before,
Really?
even within the industry. And so for you to have that knowledge
Yeah.
to share with us, to help us understand the value of that, like, we would have just heard it and been like, oh, whatever. It's just like,
Yeah.
it's like any marketing company, who cares?
They're like top.
It would have gone right over our heads.
Yeah. They're like the best gym marketing company out there.
Exactly. Yeah. Now we know a lot about them, and we're like,
Yeah.
oh shit, this is cool.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is like best friends with the guy who started that. So
Yep.
it's a perfect scenario.
Yeah, we feel very fortunate. There's
That's
you know,
awesome.
knowledge is power, and having access to that,
It's great.
we understand the value of it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm super happy about that. Well, cool. That was all I had, but I'm curious, like, how's everything going? I know you guys just got down to Florida and what, a month month and a half in?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy to be honest. Not just like we're learning a lot. Like we've done really well, like selling and all that. So we've been really getting our hands dirty in every aspect of the business. We're already making different changes and stuff to make it way more efficient
From an
from
operation.
an operation standpoint, like all the manual stuff that he's been doing. I think the hardest part for me, at least right now, is just getting a grasp with data and being able to manipulate it the way that he has it set up to eventually move it to probably some type of software because it's all in Google Sheets right
Mm-hmm.
But they've set us up for success
Yeah.
in that, like, there's a lot of I would say there's a lot of operational redundancy, but we understand why they have it, because as a fast scaling startup and they're fully in hustle mode, like they want to make sure they're not skipping out on important details.
Yeah.
And so they did a really good job at putting everything in checklists for us, and having all these detailed spreadsheets and many tabs on those spreadsheets. It's a lot to keep track of. But now, as we're coming in with a fresh set of eyes and learning about all of it, it's like, okay, I understand why they did this. Now we can finesse just a little bit, because we still are sticking to our guns and saying, like, it is repeat, 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 then iterate. Like we fully wanted to take over the operations and the everything that they've set up in terms of foundation at the gym, exactly how they've done it. And we're sticking to that. The only things we want to finesse are just like, how can we make a administrative task go from 45 minutes to 15 minutes? How can we make those tweaks? How can we save time? How can we make our employees have not be bogged down by certain tasks? Just improving that type of stuff, but keeping the roots of the business and how they set that up.
Yeah, I think also a big thing is lowering churn. They have a pretty high churn rate, and I think a lot of that is because they weren't, especially the last 2 months, because they're in this transition period, were kind of dropping the ball because of the bandwidth that they had.
So their focus was going elsewhere, which is
So
understandable.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're really focusing on that, like, and getting our employees involved to just provide more value and more attention to the clients, and that will, I think, dramatically help the churn, because if we can get that below 10%, then I think we're going to be like, that's magical, like that's all we need. So that, I think, is going to help a big time, and just like continuing to build on the community and really just getting to know everyone. We're launching a Lean by Halloween thing this coming month.
Yeah.
And our not only are we doing it, but just to get on the mat and be with all the clients and the
Get to
community.
know them and stuff.
You guys are fully immersed and working full time in the business, shaking
Oh
hands,
yeah,
people.
yeah, showing
love it.
ourselves, showing face
Yep.
as much as we can. Adding more classes, we did that immediately. We added a lot of different like little benefits here and there for the clients, just so it was like, hey, that was kind of how we positioned it. You've got these new owners that are coming in and like adding all these benefits for you guys. So it was like, not like new owners, but like partners is how we did it to make the slow transition towards completely buying them out next year. But
we didn't want clients to feel like they they have such a great relationship with the sellers, and so we were like, we don't want them to want to just drop off because all of a sudden there's new ownership.
Correct.
And so we came up with a plan on how we can do that slow transition so that the clients would be slowly introduced to us, slowly introduced to their exit, and so that they still want to keep their memberships and things like that, but also leverage, like, how can we make ourselves, quote unquote, look really good to them in a way that's like, it's fun and it's exciting, and there's extra benefits and perks that go to them. Really, it's like, how much value can you add to them, and so that it's value that they truly appreciate and want. It's learning all of those kind of quirks. So we're doing our best to continue with that and keep that going strong for the foreseeable future.
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah,
congrats.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Yeah, the thing that's been interesting is I would say we didn't really have like a formal transition plan. Other than that, very high level. Current sellers would maintain operations for the month, and we would just be trying to learn as much as we could. That I would say, if I were to do things differently, I'd try to get a stronger, more outlined, more detailed transition plan, because no matter how you cut it, like, I think our sellers were super great to us in that they were really hands-on, and they answered all our questions. We're talking literally nonstop.